Here, good afternoon, but good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak and having the opportunity. I am going to offer my thoughts and experience as an abortion provider in Rhode Island for over 30 years. My name is Scott Walker. I'm a medical doctor who specializes in obstetrics and gynecology. I've been in practice in Rhode Island since 1988. I'm board certified in obstetrics and gynecology. I'm a fellow of both the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the American College of Surgeons. Throughout my career, performing abortions has been a very important part of my practice because I feel strongly that the availability of safe, and I would say therefore legal, abortions is critically important to my calling as a provider of health care for women. My first exposure to abortion was through my mother, who worked as a counselor at Planned Parenthood in my hometown of San Antonio. She taught me that every woman considering an abortion must be treated with understanding and compassion, and that as tragic as it can be, the only reason for an abortion is that, as she put it, quote, "This time is not the right time for this woman to have this baby." She also taught me that only the pregnant woman should be empowered with this decision about her body and her life. During my residency training, I learned from the OBGYN physicians who trained me about the challenges and tragedies related to the times prior to legalized abortion. Time and again, I heard them tell stories of critically ill women suffering and dying from complications of illegal abortion. I truly believe that history has taught us that making abortion illegal will not prevent abortions. It will only prevent safe abortions. In the early part of my career, I performed abortions at each of the two clinics in Rhode Island, Planned Parenthood and Women's Medical Center. At the time, I performed as many abortions as anyone else in the state. The procedures I performed in these clinics were almost exclusively prior to 12 weeks gestation, which still account for more than 90% of abortions in the United States. Now, later in my career, I'm the sole provider in my large group of OBGYNs who perform second-trimester abortions, and most of my current abortion practice relates to performance of procedures prior to 20 weeks gestation for women carrying fetuses with severe anomalies. I feel honored to provide safe and experienced care for these families dealing with the tragic loss of a planned pregnancy. In my career, I have never performed an abortion after 20 weeks gestation, and only twice in my over 30 years of practice have I ever referred a patient for an abortion later than this gestational age, and both were prior to 25 weeks, and both were for severe fetal anomalies incompatible with life. In my experience, abortions in advanced stages of pregnancy are exceedingly rare, and in fact, only approximately 1% of all abortions in the United States are after 20 weeks. And the vast majority of those beyond 20 weeks are prior to fetal viability. So-called partial birth abortion is a procedure I have never seen or known firsthand to even have been performed. In all my years of training and practice, I had never even heard of the term until it appeared in the media related to legislation. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you. As a provider of health care for women and as an abortion provider, I urge you to support this legislation. The fate of federal protection for women seeking an abortion is tenuous, in my opinion. I believe we should act now to guarantee this protection for women in Rhode Island. As a doctor, I believe the women of Rhode Island need and deserve the availability of safe and therefore legal abortions for their current health and for their ability, when they choose, to enjoy the joys of motherhood in the future. Illegal abortion threatens both of these, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McKinney.
Doctor, it's interesting you were discussing the experience you've had in which, did you say one out of the many abortions over the course of 30 years was post 20 weeks?
That's correct.
Okay. The question that we have in front of us, the one that seems to be raised the most, pertains to, again, late-term abortion, and I understand it's not a medical term. But for us, we're looking at the situation asking why, if the fetus is viable, why, if in that case there are no fetal abnormalities, why provide for abortion in that instance? Another physician who was up earlier indicated that in those instances, there would simply be a delivery. So I'm asking why.
It's challenging for me to think of an example that disputes what you just said. In my experience, and I'm not talking about procedures I perform, but my knowledge, I can't think of any performed after 19 or 20 weeks that weren't for severe fetal anomalies. I think it's possible, to think of hypotheticals, but just in my experience, and as I've been sitting listening,
Right.
I've been trying to remember, and I can't come up with any.
And those are detectable, severe fetal abnormalities.
Many times, and in my experience, the abortions later in pregnancy, and by that I mean 19, 20 weeks, are because the anomaly was just found. Some things, ultrasound is a wonderful tool for obstetricians, but it has its limits. And we can see some anomalies very early, and some just don't become apparent till later.